be comparing two negative rational numbers, and we're going to be following the same methods that we did in our previous example, example 7. So we are going to look at comparing them by turning them into decimals. Then we'll look at changing them into fractions or fractions with equivalent denominators. And we're also going to show it on a number line. So we'll also show these on a number line. So for method 1, I'm going to look at making these into equivalent fractions with common denominators. So if we look at the negative 1/8 and the negative 3/16, we are dealing with 8 and 16 as our denominators. And I know that 8 goes into 16, so we can make the 1/8 something equivalent to 16ths, and 8 goes into 16 twice, so 2 times 1 is 2. And then the negative 3/16, that could stay the same. So we're going to start by showing this. We're going to start by showing this on a number line. And for my number line here, I'm just going to count each tick mark as a 16th. But because we're on the negative side, we're going to be moving backwards. So if this is 0, let's say this is a negative 1/16, negative 2/16, negative 3/16, and negative 4/16 we'll stop at. And now we could plot all of our numbers that we have here. We had a negative 2/16 was right about there, and negative 3/16 was right there. So here are the 2 points that we are comparing. And if we were to compare these 2 points, we know that the 2/16, the negative 2/16 is on the right. So it is more right than the negative 3/16. And 2/16 was a negative 1/8. So the number that is on the right is the greater number. So we could write this as negative 1/8 is greater than a negative 3/16. For method 2, we'll be changing these into decimal form. So we'll start with the negative 1/8. And to set this up, the 1 would go inside and 8 would be outside. 8 cannot go into 1. So we had a decimal and a 0, but 8 goes into 10 once. That leaves us with 20 once we bring the 0 down. 8 goes into 20 twice. That leaves us with 40 once we bring the 0 down. And 8 goes into 45 times evenly, so we could stop there. This is a terminating decimal. And we could say that a negative 1/8 was equal to a negative 125 thousandths. That leaves us with the negative 3/16. So we'll follow the same setup of top inside, then divide. 3 goes inside. 16 would be outside. 16 can't go into 3, but it goes into 30 once. That would leave us with a 14, which becomes 140 once we bring down the 0. 16 goes into 148 times, and when you multiply 8 by 16, that would give us 128. We're now left with 120. 16 goes into 120 7 times. And when we multiply here, 7 times 10 is 70, and 7 times 6 is 42, so that would give us 112. And then we're left with 80, and 16 goes evenly into 85 times. So we would stop there. This is terminating. And we would say that a negative 3/16 is equal to a negative 1,875 10,000ths. Now to compare these two numbers, we're actually just going to compare the absolute values to start. So step 1 will be to compare the absolute values. And for the absolute value of a negative 125 thousandths, that would be 125 thousandths. And the absolute value of a negative 1,875 ten thousandths would be 1,875 ten thousandths. The ones match up, so those are even. This 2 is less than the 8. So if I were to compare these, I would say that the 125 thousandths is less than that number. But because we are comparing opposites of this, everything is going to get flipped. So I could say that the negative 125 thousandths is actually greater than the negative 1,875 ten thousandths. And again, those numbers were the negative 1/8 is greater than the negative 3/16. So when you're comparing two negatives, you want to compare their absolute values and then flip the sign because the absolute values are the opposite of those negatives.